My name is Isabella, I am 32 years old and I live and work in San Diego as a financial advisor. I used to think I had grown accustomed to being marginalized by my family, but no one can ever prepare for the moment of betrayal in front of hundreds of people, wearing an evening gown, under spotlights that illuminate your humiliation. At my younger sister's engagement party, an extravagant affair with expensive wine, violins, and guests who held power, the police suddenly appeared and walked straight onto the stage where I was standing. Without any warning, they handcuffed me and announced that I was under investigation for drug trafficking and money laundering. What broke me was not the camera flashes or the guests' whispers. It was my parents' faces, cold, contemptuous, as if they had just thrown away some filthy object. My sister Madeline stood behind them, tears in her eyes, trembling as she said, "I tried to stop her but she wouldn't listen." Have you ever been pushed into the abyss by your own family? When someone who places a hand on your back is the same person who gently pushes? Share in the comments if you have been betrayed the way I was. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you can follow me as I expose the truth, because what happened after that was the real shock nobody expected. I remember clearly the day my father brought home a woman named Cynthia, his hand clasping hers as if he were carrying a miracle to heal both father and daughter. I was only 12 then, still not used to the feeling of losing my mother when I had to learn to accept a stranger in the kitchen that had once only held the three of us. My father looked at me and said softly, "Sweetheart, from now on she will be your new mother." I didn't hate Cynthia at that moment. She was beautiful, spoke gently, and had an eye that knew how to comfort at the right times. But there was something cold beneath the berry lipstick and the practiced smile. Maybe I was oversensitive, or maybe at 12 I had already begun to realize that love in a family can be divided like a cake. Not everyone gets the same portion. Madeline was born 2 years later. The house lit up. My father could not stop smiling and Cynthia cried with happiness. I stood behind the hospital door, hugging the stuffed bear my mother had left me, and felt myself growing faint by degrees. No one noticed how long I had waited in the hallway, or that I never got to hold the newborn sister. From the moment she could speak, Madeline was called Little Angel, Darling, and Daddy's little son. The photos on the living room wall were all of her. First crawl, first steps, first day of preschool. And photos of me? A few old ones from when my mother was alive, shoved into a tiny frame on the stairway. I asked my father why he didn't replace them. He just smiled. "Your pictures were the prettiest when you were little." I didn't press him. I did well in school. Not because anyone encouraged me, but because that was the only place I could prove I had value. Academic achievement was the only thing that made teachers friends, and sometimes my father, look at me with respect. But every time I brought home an honor roll certificate, Cynthia would say, "That's wonderful, dear, but don't stress too much. Madeline will be as good as you one day." Every compliment was shadowed by a suggestion that I was merely a draft for something more perfect to come. As Madeline grew, I realized I had not been mistaken. My father built a room for Madeline when she was 6, larger than the room I had even though I was 18. Every toy, every dress, every princess backpack was the best for her, while I kept hearing, "You're grown now, give a little, what's the harm?" I went to college far from home, feeling both relieved and bitter. No one took me to the dorm. The neighbor drove me. Cynthia was busy with Madeline's dance recital and my father couldn't leave the office. I stopped blaming them. By then I had learned to fold loneliness into drive. I studied hard, graduated early, and landed a high-paying job in finance at 24. But when I announced it to the family by email, Cynthia's reply was, "So you can send more money home to help me with Madeline, right?" That sentence hit like a cold splash in the middle of summer. I didn't know what I had been expecting. A congratulations, a thank you, or at least a "we're proud of you." It turned out I was merely a conditional source of financial support. I sent money, year after year, for Madeline's summer classes, art camps, a new tablet, and college tuition when she didn't qualify for a scholarship. I never received thanks, only short messages, sometimes with a grimacing emoji and the explanation that this year's finances are tight. One day I came home unexpectedly. My father and Cynthia didn't know I would be there. In the dining room they were talking about Madeline opening a small spa. My father said, "If Isabella puts in a little more capital, she'll have a good start." Cynthia nodded. She should see it as her responsibility. I stood outside the door listening like a stranger. No one asked if I wanted to invest. They assumed. It was as though everything I had was meant to fill the gaps for someone else. Madeline came down the stairs and froze for a second when she saw me, then smiled as if nothing had happened. You came home without telling us? I'm going to the spa to test a new machine. Want to come? I looked at my sister, golden hair, perfectly curled, glossy nails, a face without a care, and realized how thin the line between family and manipulator had become. I declined and went up to my old room, now a storage space. My bed was gone, replaced with boxes and Madeline's extra vanity. The room had been where I cried over my first bad grade, where I felt abandoned by friends, where nobody remembered my 17th birthday. Now it was storage for someone else's memories. I drove back to the city the next morning, no one seeing me off. In the rearview mirror, the house shrank until it seemed as if it had never truly been mine. Weeks later, Madeline called. Isabella, I'm engaged. Brandon proposed on the beach. It was so romantic. Come home, please. The family needs your help with the guest list and finances. I smiled. Of course. I'll come home. No one realized that on that return, I was no longer the accommodating girl. I had prepared myself for the truth. I came back to the city with unsigned contracts, pending deals, and dozens of unread emails. Office life was the same, back-to-back meetings, intense negotiations, and lunches over keyboards. In that breathless rhythm I found peace, because here at least my competence defined me. Or so I thought. Around late spring last year, I began to sense that something was wrong. My closest colleague, Grace, suddenly became distant. Open looks turned awkward. Messages thinned and then stopped. In meetings I still spoke up and offered ideas, but teammates' eyes avoided mine and the usual positive feedback faded. At first I thought I was imagining it. Stress makes people sensitive. But it didn't stop at feelings. One Monday morning I walked into the office and the atmosphere felt heavy. Unusual silence. A few coworkers at the printer fell quiet when they saw me approaching. They looked at me as if I were a stranger. I went to my office, pushing aside unease, but when I opened my inbox I nearly froze. An anonymous email had been sent to the entire executive team with the subject, regarding Isabella Harper's suspicious activities. I opened it. The body was a litany of allegations. Involvement in laundering money for wealthy clients, receiving illicit commissions from a foreign corporation, and a few insinuations about drugs. No specific evidence was attached. Just carefully written, calculated slander, and worse, sent from an address nearly impossible to trace. I pulled my chair into the CEO's office. Marcus, the man who had trusted me and given me opportunities. He looked at me with a mix of doubt and discomfort. I don't trust anonymous emails, he said, but we can't ignore when this leaks out. The press is sensitive to these cases, Isabella. I need you to step back from handling major transactions until this clears. I didn't argue or defend myself. I nodded, stood, and left as if someone had poured a bucket of ice water over me. I had done nothing wrong. I had always followed every rule in this industry. Personal accounts, ledgers. Everything transparent. Yet one email, one stray wisp of smoke, was enough to make people question everything. It was enough to strip me of the respect I'd earned on the financial stage. I became the subject of whispers. The next day Grace invited me to lunch and took a long time to speak. Are you sure you didn't accidentally get involved? She asked slowly. Maybe someone is using you? I don't want to say the wrong thing, but there's been a lot going on. I looked her in the eye. Do you think I'm selling drugs? Grace looked down and said nothing. I stood up and left my untouched tray. That night, alone in my apartment, I stared out at the city lights. I went over calls, expenditures, and contracts. Nothing unusual. No sign. But the accusations seeped in like fog, surrounding everything I touched. I checked social media. An anonymous post in my college alumni group spewed venom, labeling me as someone who used my career to cover illegal deals. The post was deleted within hours, but not quickly enough to stop people from reading it. I saw profile pictures of former classmates who once smiled at reunions, now silent. No one spoke up for me. The following morning I got a call from the bank. One of my subsidiary accounts had been frozen for suspicious activity. Money had come from a strange foreign account and the transfer description was coded. Panic rose in me. This was no longer rumor. Someone was manipulating data to weave me into a sordid picture I never painted. I called a lawyer. An old acquaintance from college who also handled tax consulting, Jordan. He agreed to audit everything. He went through transaction histories, checked my contacts, even inspected my devices. Someone is staging this, Jordan said, fingers tapping the keyboard, eyes fixed on the screen. And they're familiar with the systems you use. These moves aren't from outsiders. I leaned back, my heart pounding. You mean, someone inside the company? Jordan shook his head. Not exactly. But certainly someone who knows you very well, about your finances and personal life. Too many details line up. I was silent. One name rose involuntarily in my mind. Madeline. He had borrowed my supplementary card. I had wired money into her account. Random transfers, text messages. At family gatherings, I left my phone on the table and walked into the kitchen, and she was there. A few times I'd caught her sneaking a look at my computer screen. I shook my head. No one would do this to their own sister. But then I remembered her expression the day I refused to fund her spa. Cold, blank, something dangerous. I hadn't told Jordan. I needed proof and composure. Still, a part of me began to understand. This was just the beginning, and I had to prepare for something far worse than I had ever imagined. Madeline's engagement was held in an elegant hall in the northern suburbs, with a live band, arches of white flowers from the entrance to the stage, and rose petals down the aisle like a movie set. I arrived on time, not overly glamorous but tidy in a black blue fitted dress and nude heels. As I walked in, I caught surprised looks from a few relatives and stiff greetings. I was used to it. My family never made me the center. Madeline, though, shone as if the whole event existed to celebrate her. A pure white dress, though it wasn't the wedding, hair piled with jewels, a practiced smile. She ran to hug me, whispering with feigned emotion. I'm glad you came. There are important people here today. You make me proud. I smiled faintly and nodded. Inside, a dull foreboding weighed heavy. About half an hour into the program, when the MC invited everyone to focus on my father Richard's speech, he stepped up, took Cynthia's hand, spoke about family and love, and embraced Madeline amid long applause. I stood by the bar watching, feeling both detached and bitter. I was about to walk away when a commotion at the main entrance made every head turn. 4 uniformed officers entered with a man in a black suit wearing a badge. Silence fell. The officer's voice cut clear. We are here with an arrest warrant for Isabella Harper on suspicion of money laundering, drug trafficking, and financial fraud. I thought I misheard. Time froze. Whispers rose like waves. My eyes went to Madeline, her mouth open, hands on her chest in feigned shock. An officer stepped forward and ordered me to raise my hands. I went rigid. The air from the conditioning brushed my bare shoulders and made me shiver, unsure if it was from cold or shock. This is a mistake, I said, my voice hoarse from the lump in my throat. I have never. The officer held up a thin file. We have evidence that your personal account received multiple transfers from illegitimate sources over the past 2 months. In addition, a suitcase containing $130,000 in cash was found in your car, parked in the lot outside. The murmurs swelled into chaos. Someone blurted out, "Oh my God, did she really do that?" I wanted to shout, to run to each person and force them to look me in the eye so they could see I had nothing to hide. But my feet felt rooted to the floor. My father stepped forward, his voice slow and tinged with melodrama. We tried to help her, honestly. But if these things are true, we can't keep covering for her. Cynthia nodded and put an arm around Madeline. Tears traced down her cheeks. I told you she needed help earlier. I stared at them, mouth open, speechless. The whole scene unfolded like a rehearsed play. Madeline lifted her head, her voice breaking. Sister, how could you? I tried to keep this private, but I couldn't watch you fall without doing something. In that moment, everything snapped into place. The scattered pieces that had hovered in my mind, the accusations, the rumors, the anonymous emails, the strange deposits, were all part of a sophisticated plan. And the person behind it was standing before me, crying like a hurt child. They cuffed me right there on the stage. The chandelier above still blazed, shining down as if the eyes of a judgmental world were focused on me. I did not resist. No one defended me. Olivia was not there, Jordan was not there. There was only me and the contemptuous looks from people who used to call me the smart girl of the family. As I walked past my parents' table, I stopped and turned to Madeline. I really hope you are happy with what you've done. I said. Madeline pressed her lips together, eyes glistening. I saw the corner of her mouth twitch as if she were trying to hide a smile. They led me from the hall amid the scrape of shoes and the click of camera shutters. The press arrived with an almost unbelievable speed. A female reporter rushed forward. "Miss Harper, do you have anything to say about the money laundering allegations?" I did not answer. I looked straight into the camera lens. No tremor, no tears. Because I understood. This was a fight I would not let them win. And Madeline had not anticipated what I would do next. They held me in a small holding room at the downtown precinct, gray, windowless walls, a flickering yellow fluorescent light and a scratched plastic chair. I sat there with the imprint of the cuffs still on my wrists, my mind blank as if someone had swept away all my memories. There was no clock, no one to tell time, only the sound of shoes passing in the corridor and the metallic bang of a steel door opening and closing. They did not interrogate me right away. No one spoke except a young officer who tapped the table gently and handed me a plastic cup of icy water. He did not look at me, he set it down and left. I sipped slowly, forcing down the bitter knot in my throat. I did not call my family. There was no one to call. The only person I thought of then was Thomas, the one I had thought would stand by me through anything. After hours of questioning, my phone was returned. Thomas's voice came through on the other end, so soft I had to ask again. "You were arrested?" "None of this is true," I answered, my hand trembling. "I was set up. You know me, Thomas." He was silent for a long moment. I heard a long breath. "I'm not sure I understand you anymore. The rumors about you, they didn't start today. What have you been hiding?" I froze. "What do you mean? Do you believe those rumors?" "I don't know who to believe," his voice sounded tired. "Everyone at my office is talking. Your company's stock is dipping. I don't want to get dragged into it." "Get dragged in?" "I'm sorry," he cut me off, his tone hardening. "I think we should take a break. I need time to think." I hung up. There was no plea to stay. In that instant, the idea of standing by someone in trouble felt hollow. People can promise to be with you to the end, but a single blow from the media and a few sensational headlines and they step back at once. The company lawyer, the same man who once called me a potential successor, refused to take my case. His secretary sent a brief message saying they could not continue representation in situations that might impact the firm's legal reputation. Reputation. Something everyone wants to keep spotless, even if it means trampling someone else to do it. The police released me after 2 days. There was insufficient evidence to hold me. But there was no apology. I walked out of the station with a dead phone, a small handbag, and a deep fracture in my trust. Photographers still loitered on the sidewalk. I pulled my hat down, bowed my head, and quietly called a car. When I arrived at my apartment, nothing felt the same. The front door had a notice for a tax audit. Letters, bills, and messages piled up. On television, my face flashed during the evening news. They called me a finance professional suspected of money laundering, showing footage of me being led to a car amid the party crowd. I stood in the dark of the kitchen, the purse's dust still on my hands. The lights were off. Beyond the window, the city pulsed as if no one had been crushed in a single night. That's when I thought of Olivia. We had studied communications together in college and co-authored assignments. Later, she became an investigative reporter specializing in cases of legal manipulation. I remembered her exposing a real estate scam in Texas and appearing on CNN to analyze a major inheritance dispute. I dug up her old number and dialed, not sure if I would get a familiar voice. "Hello." Olivia's voice sounded, slightly hoarse but clear. "Isabella Harper. Do you remember me?" A beat of silence. Then she laughed, tired but warm. "Of course. If you're calling now, I'm guessing it's not to catch up." "I need help," I said. "I was set up. And I think I know who did it." I told Olivia everything. The engagement, the police, the suitcase in my car, the odd transfers. I even described the look on Madeline's face when they cuffed me, an expression not of innocence. Olivia didn't interrupt. She only sighed at the end. "Do you have any leads?" "Not enough to charge. But enough to see a pattern." "Then we'll start there. Are you ready to have this out in the open? Even if it hurts others." "I don't have anything left to protect." Olivia was silent for a moment. "I'll fly to San Diego on Saturday. Prepare everything you have. And don't tell anyone. Especially the family. Thank you, I said, my voice hoarse. You're the first person to believe me. I don't believe you. I believe the evidence. And if they're right about what I suspect, you're facing something more than ordinary jealousy. I hung up and sat on the floor. Behind me, the glass reflected my own face. Hair unruly, hollowed cheeks, dark circles under the eyes. But in my gaze I saw something that surprised me: clarity. I wasn't the accommodating girl anymore. I wasn't the silent one who nodded through injustice at family dinners. This time I would let the truth speak. And if it was loud enough, it would swallow those who had built this game. Olivia arrived in San Diego on a cloudy morning, not cold but heavy. I met her at the airport without hugs or small talk. There was no need between us. She dragged a small suitcase and a crossbody bag, her eyes sweeping the scene like someone already scanning for loose ends. You look worse than the photos, she said without a hint of joke. I feel it too, I replied softly, forcing a smile my face no longer recognized. Back at my apartment, Olivia didn't rest. She opened her laptop, pulled out a notebook and started writing. I handed over everything I had: bank statements, message histories, financial app login data, even photos of anonymous envelopes I'd received in the 3 weeks before the engagement. It's surprising how steady you are, she murmured, eyes glued to the screen. Most people would have fallen apart by now. I sat across from her, fingers wrapped around a cold, neglected coffee mug. There's nowhere left to fall. 2 hours passed in silence. She asked questions, I answered. Sometimes she typed without stopping, as if piecing together invisible fragments. At midday she looked up. The dashcam. I tilted my head. What dashcam? Do you have a dashcam on your car? I nodded. A basic one. Records when the car moves, saves to a memory card. I never checked it because I never thought anyone would touch my car. Olivia was up in an instant. Keys. We went to the underground parking. My SUV sat quietly in a corner. Olivia checked all 4 doors, the handles, the lock. She probed beneath the steering column, removed a panel and fished out a tiny memory card. Hope you haven't driven it since the incident, she said. I haven't touched it since that day. She went back upstairs to the apartment and inserted the card into a reader. The files played in chronological order. Mostly the car parked, a few short clips of movement on other days. And then we saw it. The night before the engagement, near midnight, the car suddenly started. A figure appeared in the front frame. Olivia slowed the footage and zoomed in on each frame. That's Madeline, she said softly. I went still. On the screen, my sister wore a white hoodie, her hair in a high bun, thin gloves on her hands. She drove the car out of the lot and turned onto the main road. Olivia extracted the GPS metadata and matched it to a map. 3 hours, she concluded. She was out for 3 hours. I swallowed hard. If she did something with the car. We have to investigate further, Olivia interrupted. This angle didn't capture the back of the vehicle. But if she put the suitcase in, then only she would have known where the car was, how to open it, and how to avoid the complex's security cameras. She printed images from the video, marked the timestamps and locations. She also searched for public traffic cameras that crossed the route Madeline had taken. By a stroke of luck, the online archive held a clip from a toll station about 10 miles from my apartment. In that clip, my car is clearly driving past, and behind the wheel is Madeline. Is that enough? I asked, my voice tight. Not yet, Olivia said. But this is a very strong starting point. She continued digging through lawsuits and business records tied to Madeline's past. It didn't take long to uncover a string of seemingly minor filings. A spa registered in the name of a friend of Madeline's that had been fined for health code violations. An online cosmetics distributor set up with an email address linked to a bank account that had sent transfers into my account. All the odd transactions funnel into your name, Olivia said, but they all originate from companies that Madeline is directly or indirectly connected to. She's created a braided network so everything eventually lands in her sister's hands. I sat silent in the chair, my fingers clasped together. Layers of camouflage peeled away, revealing what I had refused to believe. My sister had plotted to destroy my reputation and career to cover her own mistakes. Olivia spoke slowly, weighing each word. There's a high likelihood Madeline was actually involved in money laundering. If she were exposed, the whole chain would collapse. The only way to avoid that is to find someone with a clean account, a spotless record, and enough naivety to not scrutinize irregular transfers. Or, she paused and looked at me. Or someone who trusts their family so blindly they never suspect anything. I closed my eyes. Old memories flooded back. Frantic calls asking for an urgent transfer, texts saying, "I'm struggling," promises of, "I'll pay you back later." I had thought I was helping a sister trying to get a business off the ground. Turned out I had been a shield. Olivia began to make plans. She would gather all the evidence, contact my lawyer Jordan, file a request for an independent financial audit, and if necessary forward the files to federal investigators. "But before we go any further," she said, "you must make sure no one in the house knows about this. Especially Richard." I nodded, my eyes stinging though no tears fell. The pain had no shape to fall into. It sat inside me, sharp and cold as metal. I looked at Olivia and said in a calm voice that felt strange to me, "We will see this through." This time I would control the narrative. I would no longer be the pawn in a family play. In the days that followed, Olivia practically moved in. She set up a temporary investigation station in my kitchen with connection diagrams, fat printouts, and multiple computer windows open at once. She worked non-stop. I woke in the night more than once and found her still there, fingers on the keyboard, eyes sharp as a scalpel. Every new finding tore at me like someone peeling away layers of skin from the trust one had given my family. One of the pivots Olivia focused on was Brandon, Madeline's fiancé. He always presented as a promising young entrepreneur, orbiting Madeline like a polished, attractive satellite. I'd never liked him from the start, not for anything specific, just because he carried the entitlement of someone raised on privilege. Olivia traced the parent company Brandon ran, a venture capital outfit registered in Florida. On paper, it was in the business of developing healthcare apps. But as she dug deeper, she discovered a network of subsidiaries scattered across several states that shared a pattern: unusual transfers, frequent funding from foreign accounts, and little to no clear profit. She laid out a printout that looked like a map and stared at me without blinking. "You're not just a personal target. You're the cover," she said. I fell silent. She pointed to a series of account numbers. These companies routed funds through a broker in San Diego, the same place he used to work. From there, the money flowed into personal investment funds, then vanished into a chain of intermediary accounts. The final big recipient was you. I gripped the arm of the chair. "You mean they used my name to launder money for real?" "Not only that," Olivia continued, "Brandon and Madeline set up a string of spoofed emails sent on your behalf to partners, pretending to confirm special investments. Those emails came from addresses nearly identical to your real one. Most people wouldn't notice, especially when sent at times that coincided with company events." I bowed my head and covered my face. Shame and a cold numbness drained the air from my lungs. "And worse," she said, "your father and Cynthia may have known." I snapped my head up. "What?" Olivia slid a packet across the table, documents printed from an internal bank system, material she had obtained through a reliable source. Richard withdrew $50,000 from a savings account the day before the engagement, and that money was wired into an account in the name of a company where Brandon is listed as chief technical officer. That company does nothing, yet received funds from several senior family members. I couldn't speak. Olivia went on. "Cynthia may not have known everything, but she certainly signed a financial sponsorship form for Madeline, putting her name on a loan application. That loan was used for a shell company Brandon set up just 6 months ago. And they still let me take the fall," I breathed, staring at the sticky note on the refrigerator. "They knew, and they let me be cuffed right in front of them." Olivia didn't answer. He didn't need to. The facts were clear. I stood and walked to the window. A gray sky lay like a curtain ready to fall. I pressed my forehead to the glass, feeling the world rush past at its own pace while I was trapped in a maze built by the people I loved. "Madeline used me as a scapegoat," I whispered. "Everything she did was calculated. She needed a moral pattern, someone the public would trust, to screen the mess they were making. And when you started to suspect, she beat you to the punch." "She staged the whole show," Olivia said softly. "From the suitcase of cash to the media, everything was timed. No slip-ups." I turned to her, meeting her eyes. "Then we'll make them slip." For the first time since she arrived, Olivia smiled. Exactly. We'll make them think they've won. I pulled out a file Jordan had left a few days earlier. If they think I'm silent, if they believe I've collapsed, they'll grow careless. And when that happens, we'll pull the curtain, Olivia finished. And this time the lights will point in the right direction. No more tears. No more trembling. In that moment I felt like I had stepped out of the shadows, not to seek justice only for myself, but to expose everything they had hidden for years. I never imagined I would come face to face with Madeline at another elegant family event, let alone one my family organized. But when the mask had been peeled so far away, when Olivia had helped me uncover the smooth facade of a complex deception, I realized I couldn't play by the old rules if I wanted everything back. Olivia had a contact in the federal service, an FBI agent named Howard she had worked with on a large-scale financial fraud case in Miami. She met him on a damp morning in Los Angeles with all the files and data she'd gathered over 3 weeks. It took less than an hour for Howard to confirm. This was a textbook case of organized money laundering. And the person used as a front was me. We can step in, he said, voice low and steady, but to take the whole network down we need a decisive blow, a confession, an undeniable moment. Olivia looked at me without blinking. Are you willing to face them? I looked into the rearview mirror. My face was thin, my eyes hollowed, but my gaze was steady. You say they staged a play. Then we'll give them another show. A better one. The plan began with my disappearing. I stopped appearing in public, shut down all social media, and cut off contact with anyone in the industry. Stories that I had fled after being released spread rapidly. The press wrote that I was broken, that I couldn't handle the legal pressure. Madeline and Brandon were elated. They needed me out of sight for their script to close neatly. I needed me out of sight too so I could return at the right moment. The party would be held at the Laguna beachfront estate Richard and Cynthia used as a weekend retreat. After my scandal, they openly hosted an event to celebrate a fresh start for Madeline and Brandon, as if none of the previous shame had ever happened. I learned about the party through a member of the family's decorating team, a contact Olivia had arranged. They invited investors, family friends, and the strategic partners Richard was negotiating with for a building project in Arizona. Madeline had no idea I was still in California. She certainly didn't know that her recent moves had been tracked. Every email copied, every call recorded. Olivia and Howard fitted me with a recording device hidden in a silver necklace. It could capture voices within about 5 feet and stream the signal securely to a safe server. I chose an ivory dress, simple and elegant. My hair was pinned to reveal my neckline, and the seemingly innocuous necklace stood out like a delicate accessory. I entered as the late afternoon sun slanted across the sea, throwing golden streaks across the glass walls that reflected flutes of champagne and flawlessly made-up faces. Soft jazz drifted through the space. Heads turned as I crossed the threshold. For a few seconds the room froze. I saw Cynthia's eyes widen, her hand hesitate mid-lift with a glass. Richard couldn't hide his discomfort, and Brandon took a small step back, glancing for an escape route. Madeline did not. She walked straight up to me and smiled as if I were an unexpected supporting character in her own play. "What are you doing here?" Her voice held an odd sweetness. "I didn't think you'd be welcome." I smiled. "I came to offer congratulations. After all, you did win, didn't you?" She faltered for a beat but held the smile. "Win what?" I stepped closer, close enough for the microphone to pick up everything clearly. "Didn't you tell Brandon that I was just a sacrificial pawn to cover for you?" Her face went pale. I watched her glance at Brandon and then steady herself. "What are you talking about?" I cut her off. "Careful. Everything is being recorded. Would you like to revise your statement?" A hush fell over the room. Brandon moved toward us, tense. "Don't make a scene. She hasn't said anything wrong," he snapped. I looked at him. "Then why is there a recording of her telling a friend about staging a scheme to route money through my name? Or a clip of her driving my car at night and placing a suitcase in the trunk?" Madeline forced a laugh. "You're making it up." I signaled to Olivia, who was standing in the wings. On the large LED screen in the center of the room, an image played. Madeline sitting in my car speaking into her phone. Simple. She's too clean, too trustworthy. People will think, what kind of person like that would be involved in this? And when it blows up, no one will believe she didn't know anything. The audio came through clear, cold, and undeniable. Someone in the room exhaled. A woman clutched her husband's arm. Richard froze. Cynthia covered her mouth. Madeline stood as if turned to stone. Brandon tried to flee, but 2 FBI agents in plain clothes posing as servers blocked the exits. I stood in the middle of the room, my hands steady, my voice even. Thank you for hosting the party. It really is perfect. I didn't need to say more. No shouting, no tears, no thrown glasses or scandalous outbursts. The heavy silence and the eyes of hundreds fixed on my family were a court of judgment. In that moment, for the first time, I was no longer anyone's shadow. Chaos erupted as 2 FBI agents flashed badges from their jackets and moved straight toward Brandon and Madeline. Guests scattered, skirts rustled, heels clicked on the polished wood floor. People hugged each other and whispered in panic, eyes flicking between me and my sister, then to the doors as they searched for an escape. Brandon reacted first. He took a few steps back and shouted, "You have no right. I'm an honored guest here, A swift turn and cold steel clicked shut around his wrists. He struggled, but only made himself look worse in the eyes of investors who had once regarded him as promising. Madeline screamed and lunged forward to grab him, but a female agent immediately held her back. My sister's voice was raw, as if trying to tear the ceiling down. "Let go. You don't understand. We did this so we could have a better life. Everyone does it. Why can't we?" A dry click sounded. The handcuffs tightened on Madeline. Her face grew red, eyes wild. As she was led past me, she suddenly shouted, voice breaking into sobs. "If it weren't for her, I would be the only one my parents loved." The room fell utterly silent. No music, no murmur, only that sentence ringing and cutting straight to my heart. I stood still, saying nothing. Pain rose up inside me, but strangely there were no tears. It felt like an old wound tearing open, exposing raw flesh beneath. I watched in silence as Madeline was escorted out, her shoes striking the floor in rhythm with the clinking of metal. Richard slumped into the nearest chair, hands on his head, his gray hair hanging limp. Cynthia trembled so violently she could barely stand and had to clutch a guest's arm to keep from falling. Her eyes were vacant, as if the world had collapsed at her feet. Another agent stepped forward, his voice low but firm. "Mr. and Mrs. Richard and Cynthia Harper, you must come with us for questioning. There is evidence to suggest both of you may have been complicit, or at least aware of a portion of the money laundering activity and failed to report it." Richard looked up, face ashen. He stammered, "It can't be. I thought they were taking business risks. I didn't know." Cynthia began to sob uncontrollably and reached for him. "We only wanted her to be happy. We couldn't abandon her. She's our daughter." But those words vanished into the air. The agent calmly read the Miranda warning. The clink of handcuffs echoed again. 2 people who had once stood proudly at the head of my family were now bowed and being led away under the shocked and contemptuous stares of the guests. I watched the scene and felt a heavy weight in my chest. There was no gloating, no relief as I had imagined. Only a choking sorrow. Everything had shattered, the fragments falling all around me, irreparable. The guest, Mr. Daniels, my father's longtime business partner, approached cautiously. His voice trembled but carried seriousness. "Isabel, I did not expect things to unfold like this. But thanks to you, the truth has come out. People will remember tonight not for the scandal but for your courage." I nodded but said nothing. Courage? I felt none. I only felt like a survivor emerging from a pile of ruins. Around me, conversation rose again, chaotic and cruel. Someone whispered, "It's awful. A wealthy family hiding crime under their own roof." Another sighed, "Poor Isabella, sacrificed by her own relatives." I stepped out onto the balcony and took a long breath. The sea wind stung my face, the salt tang sharpened my nose. Inside, lights still blazed, shoes clicked, cameras snapped, testimonies mingled. Out here, there were only the sounds of the waves. Olivia came up behind me and put a hand on my shoulder. "It's over. They have nowhere left to deny it. You've been cleared," she said. I turned to meet her gaze and shook my head slightly. "What good is being cleared when everything is in pieces?" I asked. Olivia didn't answer right away. She squeezed my shoulder and looked out at the dark sea. In the distance, I watched an escort of police cars carry my family away until they disappeared. I stood there, a lone silhouette, letting the wind toss my hair. Between the pain and the vindication I had won, I realized something. Sometimes freedom means accepting the loss of everything. After the Laguna party, I thought I had crawled out of a nightmare. Reality proved harsher. Nightmares do not end with a single reveal. I had been exonerated, but the marks of the case were everywhere. My old job did not welcome me back. A few former colleagues sent sympathetic messages, but most were silent. Clients who had trusted me withdrew contracts, saying they couldn't associate themselves with someone tied to such a major scandal. I didn't blame them. Trust is the currency of finance. A tiny crack can bring a whole edifice down. The tabloids that had labeled me a money laundering professional were not quick to retract. They printed a small inside correction noting I was no longer a subject of investigation, but most readers only skim headlines and few keep reading corrections. Some mornings I went to a cafe and overheard someone whisper behind me, "That's her, the woman arrested at that fancy engagement party." I sat perfectly still, pretending not to hear, though inside it felt like a hand squeezing my throat. Olivia was the one who pulled me up. She came to my kitchen with a thick stack of papers and slammed them on the countertop. "We have to rewrite the story," she said. "If the press can turn you into a criminal, we can make you the woman who survived a cruel family conspiracy." I hesitated. Will people listen? They're used to seeing me as the villain. Olivia crossed her arms and stared at me. "Have you forgotten who you're talking to? I'm an investigative reporter. My job is to make people listen even when they don't want to. But I need your courage. This story must come from you." I was silent for a long time. Then I nodded. We began with private interviews, just Olivia and me. She put a recorder on the table and asked me to tell everything. Childhood, living in Madeline's shadow, my parents' favoritism, up to being cast as a pawn. I cried many times, my voice breaking at Madeline's shout. If it weren't for her, I would be the only one my parents loved. Olivia didn't interrupt. She let me speak until my tears became part of the record. After weeks of editing, a long feature ran in a national newspaper under the headline, "A Woman Framed by Her Family, the Story of Isabella Harper." The piece spread quickly not because it was sensational, but because countless readers saw in it a familiar pain, betrayal by blood. Comments poured in. "My sister took the whole inheritance. My parents favored my brother. Isabella speaks for us." My phone rang off the hook. Television networks invited me onto talk shows and nonprofit organizations wanted to partner. At first I was terrified, but Olivia urged me, "Use this. Not to reclaim your old career, but to open a new path." Thought a long time. Then an idea came. Start a fund to help people who had been betrayed or falsely accused by family. I named it New Dawn. At the fund's launch, I stood on a small stage in a community hall. No glamour, no spotlights, just faces that had known pain. I told them, I lost everything to betrayal, but the only thing I found again was strength when I told my story. This fund exists so you know you are not alone. We will rebuild together. After the speech, a middle-aged woman hugged me, trembling, her tears flowing. "My daughter was abused by her husband's family just like you," she said. "I thought no one understood. Thank you for speaking." I squeezed her hand, my throat tight but feeling light. Month after month, New Dawn grew. We provided free legal counsel, emotional support, and raised funds to help survivors stabilize their lives. I poured myself into this work. I felt my value return, not as a financial advisor behind a desk, but as a person who could touch others' pain and hope. Olivia stayed by my side even as she chased other stories. When I felt exhausted, she would joke, "You survived a family conspiracy. What else can knock you down?" I laughed, and in that laugh I felt I had really turned a page. I was no longer just the woman wrongly accused. I was a survivor, and even more importantly, I had transformed my pain into the power to help others rise. In the grateful eyes of those who came to New Dawn, I found a new purpose. Years passed since that fateful night in Laguna. My life had taken a different course. I never returned to finance or tried to reclaim my old career. Instead, I gave myself fully to New Dawn, a fund supporting people betrayed or falsely accused by family. Visiting community centers and hearing strangers' tearful stories, I saw pieces of my past reflected. Every hand that grasped mine, every grateful look, reminded me that the suffering I'd endured wasn't in vain. Olivia remained close. She often teased, "You were the subject of my biggest story, and now you've become the reporter for other people's broken lives." I laughed and nodded. It felt true. My story was no longer a wound but a bridge for others. Everything seemed to be at peace until one autumn afternoon, after a workshop in Sacramento, when I returned to the small New Dawn office and found a yellow envelope on my desk with no return name, only a postmark from a federal prison in Arizona. I opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter in a script that made my skin crawl. Madeline's handwriting. The letters twisted and curved with the same arrogance and coldness she had used for the snide notes of my youth. "You thought you escaped me? You can build a fund and be hailed as a hero, but I won't be here forever. The day I return, you will lose everything." No apology. No sign of remorse. Only naked hatred, untouched after all these years. I sat in silence, folded the letter back up, and felt an indescribable wave rise in me. Outside the window, the late afternoon sun still shimmered golden, and children's laughter drifted up from the street. Life had moved on, but the shadow of the past kept finding its way in. Olivia came in and set a stack of files on the desk. Seeing my face, she frowned. "What's wrong?" she asked. I handed her the letter. She read it, exhaled, and pinched the bridge of her nose. "She still won't let it go," she said. I leaned back in my chair, my voice calmer than I expected. "Maybe she never will. But I'm not alone anymore." Olivia looked at me, her gaze steady. "Right. We're not on the defensive now. If he gets out, we'll know. And next time there won't be a script that fools anyone." I smiled faintly, not because of the threat but because of a simple truth. I was no longer the woman backed into a corner, isolated under contemptuous stares. I had Olivia, the people who had come to New Dawn, and a community standing behind me. I folded the letter and put it in the locked drawer of my desk, not to hide from it but as a reminder. Whenever I see it, I'll remember that darkness still lurks, but the light is no longer fragile. A strange feeling rose inside me. This isn't the end. The fight may come again someday. But next time I will not go in empty-handed. I will carry the strength of all those who have risen from ruins like mine. And with that strength, I know I am steady enough to face any ghost of the past. Many will ask, after everything, do I still believe in family? There's no simple answer. Family can be the place that hurts us most deeply. Yet it's also where we learn to stand up, to protect ourselves, and to cherish those who truly stand by us. I lost part of my blood, but I found myself again. I am no longer the fragile woman waiting for recognition from people who never truly loved me. I am a mother, a friend, a survivor, and above all, someone who knows she deserves peace. My story doesn't close with forgiveness or revenge, but with a choice. The choice to keep living with a heart that is mended and stronger, no longer bound by toxic ties. What do you think about what I've shared? If you've experienced a fractured family, if you're trying to find yourself again after hurt, please share your story. I genuinely want to listen. And if you see yourself in this story or know someone who has walked a path like mine, follow the channel to keep walking with me through more stories. Stories of pain, of kinship, and of the journey to reclaim freedom in your own life. Because sometimes what we need most is not someone to rescue us, but a voice from somewhere that says, "I survived too. And you will as well."